Welcome, friends, to Friends number 4. Last week, here's a little bit of recap. We had Steve McCready with us, and you know what? Hello again.
Good to see you.
Give us our recap.
I'm sorry we're wearing the same clothes
as
we were wearing last time out.
Yeah, but it's been a long week wearing these, hasn't it?
Yeah, last time we were together, we talked a little bit about, how many friends should we aspire to have.
Yeah.
And basically, I was trying to make a case to say as few as possible. And it sounds really counterproductive in terms of the mission of God. And I think we'll maybe get into that a little bit today, how to befriend like Christ and Christ's approach to friendship. But in a world that says there are no limits and you should have as much of everything as you want when it comes to friendship.
That doesn't work.
Less is more.
Yeah, okay. And we found out that friends are for fun, gain, and character development. Touch a little bit on character development, and then we're going to do how to be a friend.
Sure. Well, for me, when I got into my research work, it came out of two places. I explained this last time. I had this deep burden of loneliness that I was experiencing in my own life, despite being, a friendly guy, being surrounded with hundreds of people and a great family and all that. I was battling loneliness. I also had come to a place in my walk with Christ and my followership, my discipleship, that I felt stuck. And I remember thinking, am I growing? Am I being transformed? I'm standing before a congregation every week and I'm calling them to be transformed. But what about me? Yeah. And so there was actually a collision in my studies on my academic journey where I began to realize the important role that friendship plays in the next piece of the conversation for me, which was growing as a follower of Christ. Okay. And then discovering that friendship and spiritual formation are absolutely designed by God to go together. And so you might call it character formation, you might call it spiritual formation. That's certainly the term they would use in the world that we work within, Peter. But it is actually God's sovereign plan that when he puts his spirit in us and begins to change and transform us, it's not all just through gathering on a Sunday morning and singing songs and hearing sermons, but it's actually through the network of relationships that he puts in our lives. In other words, we grow alongside others. Proverbs would say iron sharpens iron. Sure. But it's like part of how God designed us to grow is through our relationships. And so friendships then become critical when we begin to think seriously about how do we grow, how do we move forward in our relationships with Jesus, or why are we stuck, is maybe another way, and then seeing the purpose of friendship in that.
Now what Dan and I are singing and going and preaching, which is contrary to the way I was raised, and that is the Sunday is the zenith of our spirituality and our existence. And we found out that's just frankly not true.
I mean, it's important.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think we feel that more now than ever after a year of, lockdown, online stuff. Is like we feel that it is absolutely God's plan that his people are together.
Sure. And
worshiping together and learning together and hearing the Spirit together and practicing the gifts of the Spirit together. Absolutely. But also that there's a whole lot of other days in the week when God desires to work in our hearts and in our lives.
Yeah. How can I be a good friend? Help me.
Okay.
Well, help my friends.
Now, I'm not speaking about this as an expert because this is obviously an area that I'm still growing in my own life, but I've discovered through my work, through my academic work, through my practice as both a pastor, husband, and a friend, there are some keys that to help us grow in actually practicing friendship better. Some of the work that really informed me, a great book, Deep Mentoring by Randy Reese and Rob Lone, really opened my eyes to see that Jesus practiced friendship with intentionality. And when you see it, you can't unsee it. It's like one of those moments. And what these guys did for me was they allowed me to see the purpose with which Jesus moved through his relational life. And when you see it, it's there. It actually serves as a beautiful template for how we might move about our relational life as well. So they see Jesus really operating in 4 spaces when it comes to doing life with his friends. They talk about the first being a deepening, the second being a particularizing, the third being hospitality, and the fourth being patience. And this is what they identified, having done extensive studies in the Gospels at looking at every relational moment Jesus has with his friends and with the layers of friends, with his close friends, the 3, the 12. Okay, then the 70, then the passers-by, all of that stuff.
Yeah,
is like
we did that in the third week, or the second week.
Oh, did you? Fantastic. So that's going to be fresh for your hearers. So when Jesus engages with people, the relationship is always going somewhere. It's deepening. He is asking them questions that deepen their faith. Do you see that? Do you see that?
Okay.
While Jesus consistently gets asked questions, he very rarely answers them, but almost always
really
responds with a question that's about helping them deepen their understanding of faith, of God, of him. So deepening, particularizing, in that it's just not a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah.
But Jesus' ability to pay attention to that uniqueness of that individual that he's encountering in that moment is really special. But it's not undoable. When we begin to think about that, it's like, oh, that's just about paying attention, listening, hearing the stories that are unfolding in front of us. The hospitality piece is obviously huge. We see Jesus as someone who practices hospitality, who he practices it with, his ability to be creative with it. I grew up in a world, maybe you had one of these in your house, Peter, when you were growing up, because your dad was a Brit, was we had the good room. And so your house was your house. It was chaos and mess, but you had this room that no one could go into.
The living room. You can never sit on the sofa there.
And everything had to sit pristine and perfectly, just in case someone dropped around into your house.
Yes.
And they were ushered into the good room and led to believe that your family had everything perfectly together. And so I kind of grew up with that understanding of this is what hospitality is. Yeah. That's not how Jesus practiced hospitality. No. And you see that even in the fact that I love the story of Matthew, right? The tax collector that no one wants anyone to do with.
Yes.
Jesus not only calls him to be a follower, but then says, I'm coming to your house for dinner, and we're going to get your friends together. And so Jesus has this amazing meal with these tax collectors and sinners, right? His ability, who he practiced it with. For Jesus, when you see him in the New Testament, you begin to understand that hospitality is not about having a bunch of people over for a barbecue. It's about creating a sacred space and a safe space. Wow. We can do that at Tim Hortons. Yeah. We can do that at Coffee Culture. We can do that at a barbecue in our back. It's what we do when we have people around us. It's not about having, the perfect home, having an interior designer come in and say, now your house is ready for hospitality. It's actually just about having an open life and an open space. And we see that with Jesus because the Son of Man had nowhere to lay his head.
Sacred space and a
sacred space and a sacred time and a safe space. Mm. And then imagine what can happen there. Interesting, the word companion, is actually a Latin word that's the bringing together of two words, company and bread. Pan is bread.
Oh, okay.
Eating together. Mm-hmm. Okay, so friendship actually grows when you eat together. It just speaks to the beauty of, the Lord's Supper in the upper room where Jesus breaks bread and says, I no longer call you servants, I call you friends, right? He does that over, think about that even, I've started really processing that when I lead our church in communion. It's like, there's a lot of things happening here at the Lord's Supper, but one of the things that's definitely happening here is friendship with God. He's reminding us of his friendship toward us and that we are his friends. So hospitality, and then fourth is the patience piece. Is that we see Jesus' ability to long suffer with people. Like last week we talked about some of the things that we've lost in how we do friendship. I think one of the things that we have desperately lost, which incidentally is a fruit of the Spirit, is patience and our ability to endure with our friends. We see a lot more people hitting the ejector seat when friendship gets hard, or when I don't like what that person's about anymore, or all of a sudden, COVID's revealed that they're right wing, we're left wing, boom, we're out. Actually it's in that spot of choosing to stay engaged with each other is where that spiritual formation really happens, where that character formation really happens. Like, imagine this, a Baptist pastor and a Pentecostal pastor could be good friends.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it?
Amazing, right? But it is possible because we learn to practice hospitality together, and because we know that this is going to take a bit. And so there's that, hey, rather than, deciding what the battle lines are. It's
Yeah.
like, no, let's find places we can come together and keep journeying together and watching what happens and unfolds through time. Jesus has this amazing ability to practice patience. And we see it with his disciples all the time.